She invited me to her own wedding?" Ethan Cole roared, crumpling the wedding invitation in his fist. The woman who had once destroyed his career and his heart was now sending an invite, as if to mock the failure she had created. He had nothing left, only rage, and a pride that had been torn to shreds. But that night, fate threw him a different turn. In the rain of San Francisco, he met her, Mara, a homeless woman, but with a gaze stronger than any words. She agreed to go with him to that wedding, unaware that both of them were about to step into a dangerous game where every word, every smile, could bring down an empire. San Francisco's sky sank into gray clouds, raindrops pattering against the glass of the top-floor office in the Cole Industries building. The dim light reflected on Ethan Cole's tense face, the man once called the youngest genius of Silicon Valley. Now, he was left with an empty office, a half-empty glass of whiskey, and the wedding invitation lying on the desk like an unhealed wound. Her name embossed in silver ink, Sienna Ray and Daniel Ford. The power couple the press praised every day. Daniel had once been his close friend, the one who seized Ethan's company while he was crumbling. And Sienna, the woman who had whispered promises of a shared future into his ear, then vanished the moment the stocks plummeted, leaving him amid the rubble and debt. The invitation felt like fate's final mockery. He read and reread the line, "We are delighted to share this happiness with you." The sweet words cut like a knife. A dry laugh escaped his throat, a sound out of place in the empty room. Ethan stood, gazing out the window. Below, the city bustled on, colorful umbrellas moving like an indifferent stream. He remembered the moment he had stood there, seeing his name on the cover of Forbes magazine, hailed as the icon of a new generation. Now that same publication was lauding Daniel Ford, the man who had taken everything he had built. As the last office light went out, he stepped out of the building, letting the cold wind pierce his coat. The rain grew heavier, washing the thin dust from the streets, but it couldn't wash away the bitterness in his heart. He drove aimlessly through the city's steep streets, where steam rose from the pavement like smoke from blurred memories. That night, he stopped in front of a rundown coffee shop that had closed. Under the drenched awning, a woman huddled, her hands tucked into torn sleeves. Her dark hair clung to her neck, her shoes worn nearly to the soles. She didn't look up as he approached, just bowed her head, the street light casting on her pale face. Something made Ethan pause. Not pity, maybe curiosity. She didn't look like someone who had given up. In those eyes was something he recognized, the pride of one who had lost everything but refused to break. He stood silently for a long while, hearing only the rain. On the ground, water splashed with every passing car, blending with the city's heavy breath. The woman looked up, and in an instant, their eyes met. Those eyes were strangely calm, not pleading, not fearful, as if she were seeing through the wealthy shell he wore. No words were spoken. Ethan just opened his wallet, pulled out a bill, and stepped forward. But as he extended his hand, she tilted her head slightly, eyeing him coldly. The gesture stopped him short. Perhaps for the first time in months, he felt judged, not the one bestowing. The rain fell harder, wind whistling through old signs. The woman stood, stepping out of the streetlight's glow, her slender but sturdy frame. He watched her go, not knowing why he felt a pang of loss. Something in her wouldn't let him turn away. A wild pride, a quiet pain he recognized in himself. He got in the car, but instead of starting the engine, he glanced in the rearview mirror. She was still there, walking against the rain, her steps slow but resolute. A thought struck him mad, reckless, but somehow right. Maybe because he was looking for someone who could unsettle Sienna. Someone not of that world, but who could make that world bow. As he drove up beside her, the window rolled down, cold air rushing in. She glanced at him, saying nothing. He didn't know how to start, just blurted out the first thing in his mind, his voice low and hoarse. Weary. "I have a proposition." She stayed silent, her eyes still calm, as if weighing whether he was worth her ear. The rain poured thicker, blurring the lights behind. Ethan wasn't sure she heard, but in that moment, he knew if she got in this car, nothing would be the same. His heart pounded, not from hope, but from intuition. A vague sense that this woman brought something he had lost long ago, freedom, or perhaps the punishment he deserved. The car door opened. A small click sounded amid the downpour, and just like that, the game had begun. And before continuing the main story content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Okay, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We're so happy to know that. The morning after the rain, San Francisco lit up in the pale silver light of dawn. Ethan woke to a cold cup of coffee and a plan flickering to life in his mind. He wasn't sure why he was doing this, maybe pride, or an instinct to prove he still controlled his life. On his phone screen, the hotel address appeared, where he had booked a room for her. No real name, no papers, just Mara, temporary. By noon, he returned. She sat by the window, light filtering through the curtains, blending her face in shadow and glow. She didn't ask why he came back, nor show gratitude. In her eyes was no hope, just a chilling calm. Ethan realized he stood before a rare woman who didn't need saving. He took her to Beverly House, the city's premier salon, where America's elite gathered. The glass doors parted, expensive perfume, and the snip of scissors filling the air like a ritual's rhythm. She stood in the bright room, surrounded by stylists, their eyes curious on the woman in the old coat. But she didn't falter. They began. Her tangled hair was brushed straight, trimmed carefully. Her pale skin got a light foundation, her eyes accented with warm bronze. Layer by layer, line by line. As if another woman was emerging from within. Ethan sat in the corner, watching through the large mirror. Every movement of hers was unpredictable, soft, yet charged with unnamed energy. Time passed. The scissors stilled. When she stood, the room seemed to hold its breath. The woman who had huddled under the awning now stood tall, poised, and direct in her gaze. No trace of that rainy night, only an aura that dared anyone to turn away. Ethan's chest tightened, not from beauty, but from the stillness. She exuded the stillness only those who had crossed the abyss possessed. She stared at herself in the mirror for a long time. No smile, no surprise, as if meeting an old version of herself after years in hiding. Ethan meant to say something, but the words stuck in his throat. In her eyes, he saw his own reflection. Pride, hurt, and nothing left to lose. Late afternoon, they left Beverly House. On the way to the airport, wind rustled through the last golden leaves of the season. Ethan drove in silence, she beside him, eyes on the passing scenery outside the window. No one asked what the other thought, but in that quiet, a faint empathy stirred, as if two souls had brushed in the dark. The flight to Manhattan passed in hush. From above, the city unfolded like a map of dreams and ambitions where fame and loneliness walked hand in hand. As the plane landed, the city's lights glittered like thousands of diamonds along the avenues. Ethan knew this would be the stage. That night, the Avery Hotel blazed. Luxury cars lined up before the red carpet, where finance and media titans stepped out amid flashing lights. Inside, a classical orchestra played a slow symphony, like the overture to a play whose ending everyone knew. Ethan stepped out first. He adjusted his tie, breathed deep. As he offered his hand, the other door opened slowly. Mara descended, unassisted, her black dress hugging her slender frame, bare shoulders shimmering under the lights. Her hair fell softly, eyes dark as deep water. In that instant, Ethan felt the world's noise vanish. Only absolute silence remained, drawing every eye to them. The pair entered the grand hall. Gazes followed, whispers rose softly, but Mara didn't waver. She walked with slow, confident steps, as if long familiar with such opulence. Crystal chandeliers reflected light on her face, making her the room's center. Ethan felt it unfolding as planned, yet something was uncontrollable. She wasn't acting, she existed. She blended into the atmosphere with uncanny naturalness, and when Sienna's eyes the bride's met theirs, Ethan saw the shift on her face, from surprise to confusion, then frozen. No words needed. Mara's silence alone shook the entire party. In that moment, Ethan realized his plan had slipped from his grasp. The woman beside him was no longer a pawn in his revenge game. She was becoming the one holding the first piece. The music swelled, the orchestra shifting tempo. Mara lifted her head, light from the lamps glinting in her eyes like a thin blade. Ethan didn't know if he had started a revenge or stepped into another story where he himself would be tested. The night in Manhattan flowed like a dream, lit by crystal and champagne. In the grand hall, the orchestra changed keys, gentle harmonies mingling with the laughter of people lost in their own glow. Ethan moved through the crowd, his hand lightly on Mara's back out of habit, but she needed no guiding. She navigated with the autonomy of one who knew she belonged, though it was her first time. Each step of hers created a pause, halting conversations around. No one knew who she was, but everyone wanted to. In a world where everything was labeled, an unlabeled arrival unsettled the room. Mara smiled at a guest, her gaze making the man forget his half-spoken sentence. Sienna, from afar, still watched, her face feigning calm, but her fingers gripping her glass until the knuckles whitened. Ethan caught that reaction. He thought he'd feel satisfaction, but looking at Mara, he only sensed another silence deeper, more elusive. She spoke little, just listened, occasionally tilting her head as if observing how people hid themselves. At each table, she left an echo, a fleeting glance, a half-smile, or an eye that left the other puzzled. Ethan realized that in this room full of power, she was the one unbalancing them all. As they left the hall, he felt a cold draft slip down his collar. Midnight Manhattan wore a lonely beauty. The car waited at the back exit, yellow lights casting on the wet pavement. Mara walked ahead, her heels clicking softly on the stone, echoing in the still night. In the car, no one spoke. The city receded behind the glass, streetlights stretching like a skewed ribbon of stars. Ethan glanced at her, her face calm, showing no sign of the one who had stirred the party. She looked out, where buildings faded into thin fog. For a moment, a passing headlight swept her face, lighting her eyes deep but unflinching. He didn't know what he sought in her, but the feeling grew. Half of him wanted to understand, the other half feared breaking something fragile between them. When the car stopped at the hotel, she opened the door, stepping out first. Night wind tossed her hair, a faint scent mingling in the cold air. He just watched. No goodbye. The door closed, her footsteps fading in the lobby. In Ethan's mind, her image became an unsolved question. The next morning, as the first sunlight filtered through the curtains, he opened his laptop. Code lines ran on the screen, but his mind wasn't there. He typed Mara into the company's internal search tool, a system that could pull nearly any data in America. Results: blank. He tried variations: Mara Hayes, Mara L, Mara H. Nothing. No records, no address, no trace of a person who had existed. As if she had stepped out of last night's rain and been born in that very moment. Ethan leaned back in his chair, eyes distant. A chill spread from his chest. He had met many who hid well, but none as invisible as her. And what scared him more was not knowing if it was his reason or his heart that feared. That evening, he went to the hotel. Mara sat in the lobby, one hand on a teacup, gazing at the street. Outside lights reflected on her face, making her seem of no place at all. Ethan paused, quietly observing. He couldn't call it beauty, it was too still for that word. It was something that demanded silence in its presence. He approached, but when she turned, those eyes made his prepared words fail. She just nodded faintly, then looked away, as if he were a chance intruder in her world. Ethan sat across. No questions, no explanations. They just sat there, amid the distant piano from the bar. In that moment, he felt an emotion, long forgotten, pure curiosity, uncalculated, purposeless. That night, leaving the hotel, he looked back through the glass. Mara remained in her seat, hand lightly touching the cold teacup. The light made her look like an old photograph, beautiful, sad, untouchable. Ethan knew he'd have her investigated, though something inside resisted, but he needed to know, not for the revenge plan, but for the obsession taking hold. He couldn't stand someone entering his life, upending everything, then vanishing without a trace. As night fell over the city, he called an old contact, a private investigator who had helped in shady deals. His voice low, firm, but laced with unease he wouldn't admit. In the darkness outside, Manhattan blazed like a map of lies, and amid countless people with everything, Ethan found himself haunted by the one with nothing. Manhattan in October was cold and thin as paper. Ethan woke at dawn, street traffic blending with rain echoes in his memory. Last night, he had dreamed of her, Mara's silhouette through a window, light flooding her face like mist. Waking, the feeling lingered, vague but clinging. His phone buzzed. A message from the investigator. "There's something you should see." An attachment arrived. Ethan opened it. Just a few lines, but they stopped his breath. Mara D. Hartwell, only daughter of Jonathan Hartwell, former chairman of Hartwell Group Finance Conglomerate, who died in a corruption scandal 4 years ago. That case, Ethan remembered well. The press tore the Hartwell family apart, calling them a fallen empire. But one detail he had never noted, the first whistleblower, filing Sienna Ray herself. A chill ran down his spine. He reread the file. After her father's conviction, the Hartwell assets were frozen. Mara vanished. No one knew where. The last reports just said the conman's daughter had left the city. Ethan leaned back in the chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. No doubt now that rainy encounter wasn't chance. She knew he'd attend the wedding. She knew Sienna would be there. And perhaps she had waited for him. That afternoon, he went to the hotel. Mara sat in her usual lobby corner, where light through thick glass created a faint halo around her. She read the paper, turning pages as if knowing every word. Ethan paused behind, silently watching. She sensed the gaze, but didn't turn. Only when he sat across did she look up. Their eyes met, silent and long. No questions needed. She knew he understood. No words. She knew he had found out. Between them, the paper opened to a finance page, Sienna Ray's name in a new project article. Mara folded it gently, set it down. Outside, dusk gilded the city. Light reflected on the glass like a thin veil of water. Mara sat still, hands clasped. Her face held no defiance now, just the quiet weariness of one who had gone too far to turn back. Ethan didn't know where to start. His questions weren't why, but how long? How long had she watched him, prepared for that moment? In the silence, Mara spoke softly, her voice low, and even as breath. "You know now." He nodded. She looked out the window, where droplets on the glass began to slide. "Sienna took everything from my father," she said evenly, almost emotionless. "She pretended to be a friend, then stabbed us in the back." Ethan stayed silent. The words echoed from afar, but pieced everything in his mind together. She didn't need his revenge. She came for her own. Mara continued, not looking at him, about her father, the man who believed honesty could protect him, about her mother who couldn't bear the humiliation and died months later. She spoke of years in hiding, learning silence to survive, hiding her roots, changing names, erasing traces. "Do you know what it's like to disappear, Ethan?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. "It's walking through crowds unseen. Your name struck from every record. The whole world deciding you're no longer worth remembering." Ethan looked at her long. Then he saw in her eyes not just pain, but a terrifying strength, the strength of one with nothing left to lose. The room fell silent. Outside, sky darkened, street lamps reflecting on the glass, splitting Mara's face in two, light and shadow, real and illusion. Ethan felt his heart heavy. His plan, the wedding, the show now seemed small, shallow. Before him was no ally, no card, but a survivor from the ashes. Mara stood, walked to the window. "You wanted the truth," she said, "and now you have it. As for me," she paused, "I just want my name back." Ethan watched, silent. In the reflection, he saw their silhouettes side by side, two worn by the past, seeking to mend the unmendable. That night, leaving the hotel, he didn't go home. He walked the Brooklyn Bridge, wind slapping his face, cold and salty as truth's taste. He recalled first seeing her in the rain. Now he understood, she wasn't revenge's chance, but a mirror to the man he had lost. Far off, city lights blurred in fog. Ethan stopped mid-bridge, watching traffic below. A clarity hit, the game had changed. Now, he wasn't sure who controlled whom. And now, dear viewers, pause a moment to hit subscribe before the main story continues, but only if you truly empathize with what I'm sharing here. And leave a comment below, letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is now. It's fascinating to see everyone from everywhere joining us. The days after that meeting dragged slow as thick fog over the Hudson River. The city still buzzed, still blazed, but beneath the golden high-rises, something stirred, silent, cold, deliberate. Rumors spread. A leaked photo from the Manhattan party night, Ethan Cole, hand in hand with a mystery woman. Media dubbed her the enigmatic lover, finance channels questioning ties to Sienna Ray's conglomerate. No one knew who leaked first, but in hours, the storm hit media networks everywhere. Sienna stood on the top floor of Ray Holdings, gazing down at the city. On her desk, a tablet glowed with headline after headline. In that light, her face held no victor's smile. Instead, the coldness of one about to strike. A call was made, curt directives issued, emotionless. From that moment, the game restarted, and this time, she wouldn't let anyone rewrite the end. Meanwhile, Ethan began noticing cracks in his life. A meeting canceled without reason, a contract suddenly reviewed, shareholders shifting alliances. He saw his name quietly removed from key positions. It happened too fast, too precise, as if a hand had prepared long ago. In his apartment, next morning's papers blanketed the table, his face beside headlines on Investor Ethan Cole's Downfall. Each line sliced his pride thin. Outside, rain again. Droplets fell steady on the glass, reflecting his still form, as if the city outside melted. Mara read the news from her hotel room. No expression, no anger, no fear. Just a strange stillness enveloping her. She knew it was coming, knew Sienna wasn't one to let go. On the table, her laptop open, a folder named Hartwell Originals. Inside, old files, contracts, bank docs, recordings. She had gathered each piece, each proof over years, weaving her past with her own hands. Night fell, Manhattan a labyrinth of lights. Mara sat by the window, eyes reflecting the breathing city. But inside her, the quiet of one stepping into the final battle. She had lost youth, honor, her name. Now, only one thing worth keeping: the truth. Ethan didn't know of those files yet. He spent the day calling, emailing, holding his company from collapse. But doors closed one by one. Those who once admired now avoided his eyes. In money and power's world, no one sided with the falling. He knew that best, but never felt its cruelty so raw. As night descended, he drove aimlessly through rainy streets. Neon signs reflected on the windshield, each color a breaking memory. At a red light, he stopped, seeing his weary face in the rear view, a man who had lost the priceless faith in himself. At the city's other end, Sienna hosted a private party in her lavish penthouse. Men in suits, women in silk gowns, clinking glasses and toasts rising. Amid the crowd, she smiled the smile of one reclaiming position. But beneath perfect makeup, her eyes hid a shadow. She didn't know that as she raised her glass, what she guarded was cracking from within. For in that same moment, in a small room blocks away, Mara's computer hummed. Data, uploaded in streams, each proof, each buried record. The screen flickered cold blue. She needed no declaration, no vow. Each click a cut into the lies Sienna had built over years. Ethan returned home near midnight. The city slept, but his mind didn't. Footsteps echoed softly in the vast apartment, like failure's aftersound. He sat, head in hands, feeling the world shrink around him. In that instant, he thought not of money, fame, or Sienna. Only the woman by the window, her eyes reflecting the city like a lake in storm. Somewhere, amid gray clouds, perhaps Mara gazed the same way where dark and light met, where plans became not strategy, but destiny. On his phone screen, a message appeared, no sender. Tomorrow, she'll know what it's like to lose everything. Ethan stared at the words long. Outside, distant thunder crashed, splitting the sky in two. He didn't know if threat or promise, but he understood from this moment the game had no turning back. The city still glowed, but somewhere in those lights, the dark had learned to name its humans. That dawn rose slow, light pale as if filtered through old world's dust. Across the city, first news lines appeared, not ads, not markets, but truth. Ray Holdings' financial web exposed. Hidden accounts, insider trades, leaked recordings. It hit all at once, unstoppable, unerased. Major papers published simultaneously, as if an invisible hand had planned long ago, and in each article, Sienna Ray's name cracked like irreparable fault. Her boardroom sank into silence. Dozens of screens blazed with images of an empire crumbling. Shareholders called nonstop, emails flooded, but excuses held no value. In that moment, the power she once clutched dissolved like ash. Outside, Wall Street erupted. Charts plunged, Ray Holdings stock halted, investors who once bowed now turned away. They cared not for why, just smelled blood. In the chaos, Mara stood in her small room, window light on her face. It had begun. She felt no joy, no victory, only emptiness spreading in her chest. For years, she lived for this justice's blade falling sharp and cold. But when it came, she realized revenge brought no peace. It left only the heavy silence of a soul drained of tears. On the broadcasts, Sienna surrounded by cameras and lights. She kept her old smile, but eyes held desperate panic. Those who called her icon now turned, once friendly handshakes now evidence against. An empire dissolved without explosion, just the whining silence of fame's fall. Ethan watched it all from his office. Screens before him flashed hot news. Deep down, he knew Mara triggered the storm. And what he didn't expect, she did it not just to save him, but to free him too. The glass reflected his face, weary gaze, but clearer than before. For the first time in years, he felt no need to prove anything. Fame, money, power all fragile before one who dared face the past unflinching. The city turned chaotic. Papers thick on sidewalks, passers-by gossiped, high-rises blazed as if light could hide the filth. But no one could stop truth's wave once awakened. Mara walked through Central Park that afternoon. Autumn leaves drifted on the long path between trees, each step light as passing memory. In the air, faint metallic scent, the scent of endings. Far off, children laughed, people biked, life went on, indifferent to pains of once mighty. She paused by the lake, surface mirroring gray sky. Water rippled softly, forming 1,000 shapes of herself, breaking and reforming, forming and breaking. In it, she saw the woman in the rain, the girl who lost all, the one who quietly reignited justice's fire, all existed in her eyes now calm and shadowed. Elsewhere, Sienna escorted from her office. Reporters crowded, cameras flashed wild, her steps dry and hollow on the stairs. No one touched her, but each gaze a verdict. Amid the throng, she lifted her head, and for a flash, perhaps realized she walked the path she once pushed others into. Sky turned ash gray, Manhattan in thin rain. Ethan drove the avenue. Wind through the window carried damp earth and rust. He stopped before an old building where Mara stayed. Yellow light from an upper window, small but clear. He didn't go up, just stood, watching that light, like a beacon in ocean. Night came, the city slept, but within, memories woke. Mara sat in her chair, eyes on scrolling news on her computer. She knew it was done. She had won, but the win had no one to celebrate with. Outside, last raindrops fell on the roof, blending with fading traffic. In the quiet room, her breath slowed. An old chapter closed, and somewhere in the dark, another opened, not revenge, not hate, just space waiting for something newer. Life. Across the city, Ethan still sat in his car, eyes on that room's light. When it flicked off, he lifted his head slightly, and in a flash, understood they had both changed, not winner, loser, but two souls come full circle to meet themselves again. On the horizon, dawn's first ray pierced the black sky. Truth had awakened, and no one could return to old dreams. All right, dear viewers of mine, if you're watching and finding this story intriguing, comment number 1, or I'm still here to keep listening, okay? Malibu's sea stretched in dawn's gray. Waves lapped gently on fine sand, carrying salt and early mist's chill. On the horizon, the first light streak opened, thin and trembling like fresh stitching on torn sky. Ethan sat alone on the wooden porch, steaming coffee in hand. Waves blended with his heartbeat, slow and steady. It was all over. The storm had passed, carrying burdens once heavy in his heart. Now, only sea's stillness and wind's language of forgiveness. After the scandal, Sienna vanished from news as if never there. Her empire crumbled, former bowers now shunned, contracts to dust in cold boardrooms. The city resumed its rhythm, indifferent, as if no one had lost a lifetime. Mara vanished too, for a time. No one knew where, only that her hotel room left a short letter, no recipient named. Inside the envelope, an old photo, her father by the seaside, kind smile, sunset blurred behind. Ethan kept that photo. Perhaps in that smile, he saw the man who once taught him to believe in good. Time passed. Manhattan forgot. Markets steadied. New faces rose. Old ones faded. But for Ethan, the world wasn't the same. He left the company, sold shares, left the city for a small house on the West Coast shore where waves replaced phone rings each day. That morning, wind carried lavender and sea salt. He gazed far, horizon hazy in mist, then spotted a figure walking the sand. Pale clothes, long hair, wind-tossed, steps slow. He wasn't surprised, nor smiled. Just knew what must come had come. Mara walked the sand, leaving faint footprints trailing toward him. She looked different, calmer, softer, as if soul's edges sanded smooth by waves. When she stopped before the porch, morning light slanted through, making everything transparent. No words, just silence enough for two people to know all that hurt them had dissolved in wind. They sat together, watching the sea. Waves lapped, sky cleared to jade green from gray. Ethan set his coffee down, hand brushing the old photo lightly. Mara followed his gaze, her eyes softening. In that instant, both understood. No apologies needed, no explanations. For every wound had served its purpose, teaching them to cherish peace. By noon, sun rose, illuminating salt grains on her hair. Ethan looked out, seeing a small boat drift on water, reflecting light like silver ribbon. They sat long, no words, but between them, a quiet bond like two streams finally merging after 1,000 mountains. As sun dipped low, Mara rose, walked to the shore. Sea glowed in day's end gold. Ethan followed, not hurried, not slow, leaving parallel footprints to water's edge. Before last light faded, they stopped, gazing at the sinking sun. Everything around held breath. In that moment, Ethan knew this wasn't end, but pause before another beginning, lighter, truer, shadowless past. Night fell, sea turned inky black, stars emerging, scattered on water. Light from the small house behind spilled warm and soft. Mara sat on the steps, hair lifting in breeze. Ethan stood inside, looking out, feeling sea's breath merge with his own. That night, wind no longer bit. Waves no longer raged. Only steady sound remained, like heartbeats of two who passed fire and ash to find themselves. When sun rose again, sea unchanged, vast, calm, indifferent to human tales left on sand. But in each who weathered the storm, something shifted forever. Ethan and Mara no longer bore past's debts on shoulders. They were souls cleansed, not by time, but by facing wounds head-on. Revenge no longer mattered. Truth, once bared, just starting point for another journey finding faith anew. In a world where all sought victory, they learned sometimes courage's greatest was release, for only in releasing could one reclaim self. Afternoon, as sun slanted on sea, Mara stepped to sand, wind whirling her hair. Ethan followed, light smile on lips. The smile of one knowing peace came not from forgetting, but accepting. From afar, waves lapped steady. Sea blurred all footprints, but couldn't erase the path walked. And in that moment, they knew. Life began, not with win, but rising after total loss. This story ends as sea stills after gale, not loud, not bright, but deep and true. For sometimes, beauty's finest appears only after daring the dark. If you've carried an unhealed wound, share your thoughts below this video. For sometimes, your story could be the small light guiding another through night. And if you wonder whether that peace lasts, stay tuned for part 2, Those Behind the Light.